welcome to Milan.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be there, even though it's only digitally.
So after Copenhagen, Stockholm, London, why 24 hours in Milan?
Well, it's obvious why, because Milan remains the capital of design. The Salone date is a really important date in the calendar, even if it's been pushed to September. It felt like we needed to be there and to tell people about the new ideas, and then people can see the new ideas for real in September. But the date on the calendar is very important, and of course we miss Italy a lot. You know, we haven't been there even last year, so it's starting to become a really long time. And of course we planned this event hoping that that there would be at least some liberty of movement for us and for people in Milan. But that's not the case, so we had to pivot very quickly and start using our hologram.
No problem. You're always at home in Milan. And hopefully, let's tell everybody that in September, the Salone will be back first week of September. And hopefully we will be full blast with our friend of the design industry in September.
Well, when I first came to the Salone, it used to be in September. So maybe it's not such a big change after all.
Yeah, if I remember well, it's 17 years of your presence in Milan for Salone.
It's actually been longer than that, because I did it, you know, before with Capellini, and I did it once even with Habitat, actually. You know, so
Habitat, yes.
Honestly, it's more like 30 years. You know, I don't want to admit it, but it's true.
Do you have some great memories and highlights you want to share with our friends? I remember a special gig in 2015 with Tony Chambers, at the time editor-in-chief of Wallpaper magazine, with a concert, a rock concert you had. What about your own personal souvenirs?
Well, number one, it wasn't rock, it was disco. Okay,
sorry.
This is a very important distinction for me. So the music has been good. I mean, the most memorable one, honestly, was the disaster, which was the volcano. So the volcano in Iceland was a particularly memorable occasion, because half the people couldn't get there and half the people were stuck there, and there was just a general panic, and it was really exciting. You know, I love a bit of chaos, and that was really, really chaotic.
Yes, you've been always a great supporter of Milan, and then I have to say a lot of your presence and your exhibition, and in the Manzoni Theater, in the Nova Abandoned Theater, were really great energy spot in terms of the design industry and the design showing your creativity. In Milan, which is normally a bit of a stable, you know, city, and a bit, sometimes people say a bit boring, but it's not, as we know. We are here to launch today the Hydro Chair, this fantastic aluminium product. So do you want to tell us a bit about what is this project for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have been, interesting enough, that you can trace the history of this chair back to Milan with an exhibition I did maybe 7 or 8 years ago at the Museum of Technology, the Leonardo da Vinci Museum, where we partnered with a German robot metalworking company called Trumpf, and made 200 chairs and made a restaurant in Milan, which was really thinking about the future of making, the future of customization, and the more global, local kind of possibilities of actually making things more locally again, but using digital manufacturing methods. So we made this chair, and the chair was very angular, very sharp. It took maybe 120 rivets to hold it together. So although it was very efficient in making the metal work, it wasn't a chair which was going to be good for production. But I was intrigued by the idea of an outdoor metal chair. And I've been trying for the last 7 years to find a way of doing that in a more innovative way, because obviously with metal chairs, most of the good shapes have been taken, right? This is the problem with design just in general, is that, you know,
don't tell anybody.
But looking at the progress of design, you really have to have a new material or a new way of living, like in the 60s with the beanbag, for things to change, right?
Right.
It feels like we've been in a pretty boring period for a while for new materials and new, I mean, there's a lot of new materials, but they're insanely expensive. So what was interesting about working with Hydro, who are our partners on this, the big aluminium company in Norway, is that we were able to really push aluminium technology to use the new innovations that are going on in the car industry. You know, with electric cars, all of the car bodies are moving to aluminium. So the most innovation in aluminium right now is probably happening in the car industry to try and reduce the weight of the car and increase the efficiency. So we use this technique called superforming, which is where you heat the sheet of aluminium to a really high temperature and then blow air to push the thing into a mold, which is why it's got that kind of balloon type shape. It's sort of the inspiration. But so the chair is interesting from a couple of different aspects. You know, one which is the technological aspect, I guess, and you know, the way that it's actually glued together. So the legs are glued to the body in the way that now cars are made with adhesives. They're no longer welded or riveted. They're actually glued together. And aluminium is a particularly interesting material because it's extremely light and it's weatherproof as well. So it makes it a good indoor-outdoor chair. But you know, you're French, and if I think of some of the inspirations behind it, it's also partially earlier cars, like the 2CV, like deux chevaux.
Oui.
So, you know, I spent, you know, I did spend, you know, when I was 5 or 6, I did. My parents had that car. In fact, I crashed it by taking off the handbrake when it was on a hill, when I was left alone in the car. But so I have a lot of memory for that corrugated bodywork, and that's what gives the structural strength to the very thin aluminium. So the puffy balloon-like shapes actually curve the metal several times and actually give it rigidity, which you'll see also in things like other luxury items like Rimowa luggage, for instance.
Exactly.
It's got a similar kind of structure as well. So I've been intrigued by decoration, which comes directly from the structure. It's something which I've often played with, you know, in these lamps, you know, in these chairs, the pylon chairs as well.
Yeah.
Were always, you know, to do with the structure, and then sometimes the decoration is the consequence of having a very clearly defined structure.
So this chair is supposed to be like 100% recycled. What does it mean exactly for an aluminium chair? Is the material recycled or what?
No, we started off with recycled material, but the technique is too extreme to use recycled aluminium. But I think the interesting thing about aluminium is that it's probably one of the very few materials that is naturally recycled because it's valuable and because it takes much less energy to recycle than to extract it in the first place. And then the other interesting fact is that the aluminium is infinitely recyclable. Most materials deteriorate very quickly, lose their qualities. But it's not very well known that 75% of all aluminium ever made is still in use. So that's a pretty extraordinary statistic, I think, in terms of the realities of recycling, because as you know, recycled materials often have a slightly lower perceived value. Recycled materials often don't perform quite as well as the virgin materials. And often it takes a lot of energy, a lot more energy to recycle sometimes than to make the stuff in the first place. But the opposite is true of aluminium.
Okay, let's remember our followers today that Wallpaper Store is a lucky partner of launching this hydro chair with Tom Dixon. And we are lucky to have a few limited numbered pieces signed by you, Tom, signed by you. So you have to sign only.
You think that's going to make them more valuable or less valuable?
And so it's online today on Wallpaper Store hydro chair. You're launching also today the Globe Chandelier, I think.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, you know, we've been, you know, really fortunate to be in the lighting business, because lighting business is probably the biggest category for us. And it's precisely one of those categories which is being driven right now by really huge changes in engineering and in innovation. You know, the LEDs have been magical in terms of giving a whole new palette of design possibilities, but also, you know, saving energy, you know, using maybe only 7 or 8% of the energy you'd used before with incandescent. So that's been really exciting to be in lighting. And we've specialized a lot in these, you know, large kind of metallic globes, which have been very popular recently. And we've also done a lot of kind of what you could call contemporary chandeliers, which tend to be just clusters of individual lamps dangling from the ceiling. So I wanted to try and use them in a different way and make more like a single point, but an explosion of light. So the burst chandelier is made of 12 lamps that are all exploding from a central axis to make a much more dynamic space-filling shape. I mean, we found that, you know, we're often used in spaces that have got big voids, and there's a big fashion at the moment for big lobbies in office buildings, huge lobbies in hotels, or even in office blocks, and there aren't any really substantial lamps that we've seen that really do that function of illuminating, plus filling the space, plus being an extraordinary object that can live in lots of different kind of environments, if you like.
Definitely, kind of art pieces you're known for.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it is.
But that's the interesting thing about Milan is the you know, the new explosion in, you know, Milan historically has been a design city, but you know, we're seeing it evolve also into somewhere which is really important, you know, the shift from Florence to Milan, for instance, for fashion, and definitely on the art scene, you know, a really huge change in perception of Milan as a place where you go and see amazing contemporary art at the Pirelli Foundation, at the Prada Foundation. So I think there's something really exciting about Milan at the moment, which still keeps on coming back and reinventing itself, right?
Yes, trying to. It's a bit of my next question about what you have been always a very revolutionary designer. I mean, looking forward, always pushing the limit, the boundaries of design. And what is for you, you know, what is next, you know, in terms of design for you, in terms of material, shapes, function? How do you see design, you know, moving forward from after this one year of surreal, you know, completely stop moment?
Well, I think, you know, the biggest conundrum for designers is the question you get asked by every student, every journalist, is a sustainability question, right? It's like, well, what is it that you're adding to the earth that should be there? You know what I mean? So that's something that I think people are increasingly, quite rightly, focusing on. And I think design in a way has to come forward with solutions, you know, to that. And it's clear also that the pandemic has made people focus increasingly on the local and increasingly on you know, smaller production, and questioned the huge amount of globalization that's been going on for the last well, for time immemorial, if you like. You know, so I think there's a moment for introspection. There's definitely a feeling that there's a big topic that everybody has to work on collectively. But I think that the change has to come from design, it has to come from government legislation, and it's got to come from consumer behavior as well. But it's definitely something that all designers I know are exploring and trying to find their own attitude towards, right?
Right. Well, a big challenge for designer, I can imagine.
Massive.
Massive, yes. Last question, Tom. We are an e-commerce partner, and I know for fashion it's a bit of a normal, channel of distribution. For design, it's quite new, and I just wanted to trickle you about, if you are an online customer yourself, and then what do you think about this distribution channel for design? I mean, are you able to translate the magic of a design, of a product, of a material through digital presentation? What do you think about that?
Well, the pandemic obviously has accelerated all of our communication efforts into the only place that we're able to do, which is what we're doing now, right? So right. I think that change in terms of how you communicate and how you kind of try and get people interested is definitely there's no going back now to how it was before. Anyway, it's something that we knew we had to get better at because it was inevitable anyway. And from the perspective of digital channels, obviously, there's a massive shift happening right now. I don't have to elaborate on that. We've all seen that the delivery services, hugely increasing. I think from a design perspective, it's kind of interesting because the market has become global. Interior design, still was a very localized kind of taste and distribution for a long time. It's one of the few businesses that still isn't truly international in the same way as fashion is, or even film, things like that. But for me, it's been also about trying to work out how you can be efficient in terms of your footprint. I mean, even if I look around here, some of the ideas, for this lamp are really about how you make it, completely flat for shipping in a much more efficient way. Yeah. I think that the digital means are not just the e-commerce, which is becoming increasingly important for homewares in terms of selling and in terms of distributing and in terms of explaining. It has to be something also that for designers is very interesting right now because just like with the music business, you can send files around the world and you can get things made in much smaller factories on much smaller machines anywhere that you like. And that revolution is only just starting, right? So I think we're in a really interesting time for design where things can be more personal, things can be done in smaller batches, and things can be tested much faster in a way. But it's interesting that there really hasn't been as much shift in the mentality of furniture companies as, for instance, in music or fashion.
Well, there are some logistic issue that we are still tackling with.
Yeah, you don't want to return a sofa if you don't like.
Exactly. So you have to convince your customer this sofa is unique and it's fantastic in their place. Yeah. Are you a customer yourself online?
Yeah, of course I'm a customer online, but I'm also a seller online. We do a bit of our own e-commerce. I use eBay a lot. I'm a collector of eBay sculpture. As a little hidden secret hobby. So yeah, obviously the e-commerce thing is endlessly fascinating for us in terms of direct conversation also with customers, right? So not so much the commerce, but the way that also the medium of communicating is no longer, it's much more image led, right? So I love where I think Instagram can be quite dangerous for a lot of reasons. Pinterest and Instagram are these visual mediums, and YouTube as well. And visual excitement is really, you know, our trade. You know what I mean? So it's actually really good for people that are interested in the aesthetics of things, right?
I fully agree. I fully agree. But anyway, I invite everybody who will visit London in the future to visit your fantastic new headquarters and shop and restaurant in this fantastic location you opened, like, I think 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've been closed for most of the year. We're
Yeah.
a nightmare, but luckily for us, outdoors opens next Monday, and then okay, a month later, indoors opens again. So we're hoping that there's at least a great season coming for us, and that there's hope on the horizon. I mean, we've seen obviously in China life go back to normal, so at least we know that this is not forever. But it's been, you know, pretty tough, and it's still a real shame that I can't be in Milan, that's for sure.
Well, meeting is confirmed in September, first week of September in Milan, and then third week of September in London Design Festival in your place, Tom.
Okay, amazing.
Okay, thanks a lot.
See you there. Thanks for everything.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.